and welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On today's episode, we are going to talk about Conclave, but before we jump into it, I just wanted to make a little announcement, or I guess give a little apology for a longer than usual absence. I had an unexpected loss in my life that took a couple of days to just sort of re-anchor myself and get back into even the mood of doing podcast episodes. And so I do apologize that it's been, I think, about a week or so since my last episode. There were certainly other things that I wanted to cover in between, and I might get to those. But I thought, why not start with Conclave on my way back? I saw it this afternoon or yesterday, by the time that this episode goes up and is live. And I wanted to talk about it. It actually was very good, very decent, more so than I expected. So Conclave, for anyone who is not familiar with this movie, it stars Ralph Fiennes. There are a slew of other actors and actresses in this who I think are just incredible. I mean, John Lithgow, Isabella Rossellini, Stanley Tucci. It's just an amazing cast, and they all do a very wonderful job here. The story on Conclave is exactly what it sounds like. This is the Pope of the Catholic Church has passed away, and so it brings you through kind of the conclave session that happens with the cardinals choosing a new pope to lead the Catholic Church. So this is headed by Cardinal Lawrence, who's played by Ralph Fiennes. He is essentially the director of the conclave that gets to decide, how everyone is voting. He is leading this process. He doesn't get to decide like how they vote, but he goes through the process with them and is essentially leading the other cardinals in the voting of this new pope. This is not a movie that typically I feel like I would have rushed out to the cinema to go see. I think what intrigued me about it was the lineup of actors and actresses that they did have in this. I'm a very big fan of Ralph Fiennes. I think he's incredible. I loved him in The Red Dragon, if anybody has seen that. He's done so many movies that I just have always been impressed by him, and his brother Joseph is also an actor. They're both really great at what they do. I've never gone to see a movie that Ralph Fiennes was in where I was like, wow, he's phoning this in, or he didn't give it his all, or he didn't, try really to do this role. I think that he's always really just one of those actors who enjoys what they do and wants to really do it well. And there is no exception in Conclave. He does such an incredible job. Everyone does. And I was not familiar with this story beforehand. Conclave is based on a book of the same title, but I have not read that. I am very interested in reading it now, but I hadn't read it before sitting down to watch the movie. And there is an interesting twist to the end, which obviously I won't talk about or get into, but honestly, it was pretty unexpected. For anyone who is familiar with the book, obviously you will probably already know what the twist to the film is, but it was unexpected for me. I thought the movie was really well done. It came in at about 2 hours, and I think at one point I had checked to see what time it was, because I was sort of figuring, we still have a considerable more amount of time to go through with the movie. And it wasn't like I was bored, but I was genuinely surprised to see that the movie was nearly over, that we had gone that 2 hours. This is one that, even though, it is more of a serious topic, and it does sort of take a little while to get to that sort of twist and get to some of the more, I hate to say interesting, but some of the more interesting things that happen in the film, because I did thoroughly enjoy the entire movie, but there are just certain sort of dramatic, I guess, things that happened in the film that did take some time to get to. But by the time we had really gotten to those, I wasn't noticing how quickly the movie was going by. I wasn't sure exactly how long the film was. I sort of expected it to be about 2.5 hours. And by the time I had checked the time, it was like, oh, we've only got maybe 15 more minutes of this movie and then it's over. And I was like, wow, it sped by, it seemed to. One of the things that completely stood out to me, though, in Conclave really didn't even have anything to do with the story itself. Like, the story itself, I think, is good. It's an interesting one. It will keep you, kind of engrossed in what's really going on. I think it is one of those good. It reminded me of the Da Vinci Code, kind of, a little bit, in the way that, like, the pacing is done. I think the Da Vinci Code is a little bit more like, not action, I hate to say action, but it's a little bit more involved. Like, they're doing a lot more things, because they're chasing after clues and stuff. But it definitely gave me the vibe of the Da Vinci Code, if you're familiar with those. Like, it was along those sort of similar lines in the pacing of the films and sort of how the movie ties into sort of the religion and that sort of thing. And I think the Conclave would be something that you would enjoy even if you are not of that religion. I am not Catholic. I very much enjoyed the movie. But the one thing that stood out to me, to get back to my point, the one thing that stood out to me the best about Conclave, or that I was the most impressed by, and impressed is exactly the word, is just how they used the shots in the film, like the cinematography, the use of color, the use of like symbolism and objects, how they would, close in on, like, do a zoom shot or something of a particular thing, like the wax seal on the old Pope's door, or the ring and the process that they go through in taking that from the Pope, and what is done with it, and, the voting, and how they used sort of showing you certain things and not showing you other things, and like blurring some shots and being super crisp and sharp in others. Like, just whoever was in charge, or it was the director of photography or the director of cinematography, was just, should win awards, I feel like, for Conclave. It was just stunning. There was one moment that for me really reminded me of The Handmaid's Tale, just in how they use like the reds and the whites and the women's like headdresses and stuff in Handmaid's Tale. There was something that was very similar to that in Conclave that very much stood out to me in that way. And it's just, I don't know, it's just like a very incredible way to see how directors and cinematographers and all of that like come together, and how they do the costuming, and how they work in color to those, and how they work in certain things to make it really look authentic, for one, or as authentic as you can in this instance, but to make certain like objects stand out more than others, and how well worn they are, and that sort of thing. It has a very lived in feel to Conclave. So it's not like everything is brand new and, you're just sort of watching this story play out. Like, you get engrossed in it. It very much feels like you are kind of in this world that has been existing for a really long time, like the Catholic Church has. So very much would recommend going to see Conclave, even if it's not on your list, because it wasn't necessarily on my list. But even if it's not on your list and it's just something that maybe has been on your periphery and you weren't sure about seeing, I would highly recommend. I think it is absolutely wonderful to go see. So those are my thoughts on Conclave. I would love to know what you guys thought of this one. If you have seen it, or if you have read the book, subscribe to join the Movie Nerd family, and I hope to see you in the next episode.